But here, this was fascinating, and this was this morning. There is, after the interview with Joe Scarborough a couple of days ago, where Hickenlooper from Colorado refused to say that he was a capitalist, which was just an absolutely bizarre situation. And I think indicative of what the candidates in the race must be aware of, particularly a guy like Hickenlooper, is that the Democratic Party, the primary voters, have moved to the left. And if you want to, at the very least, be part of the conversation, you need to project that to the rest of the party, which is, the problem that Beto is going to have. However, this has set off alarm bells for a lot of people across the board, not just on the Joe Scarborough show, but I would imagine in the Democratic Party, but certainly a guy like Donnie Deutsch, who is was having his own little freak out. And it is a fascinating exchange too. This is Joe Scarborough and Donnie Deutsch. Donnie Deutsch just bemoaning the fact that, and these terms are thrown around, capitalists, socialists. I mean, they, in the context of our politics, they don't really mean that much in terms of, like, when we talk about all the candidates who are running in this race, and to the extent that we talk about anything that is actual practical politics within the U.S., these two terms don't mean that much, frankly. But here are these two.
Joe, I'm going to take it one step further, because this is how dangerous socialism. I find Donald Trump reprehensible as a human being, but a socialist candidate is more dangerous to this country as far as the strength and well-being.
Pause it for 1 second. First off, and we should go back, we live in a country, not a company. I should just remind that.
There.
Yeah, indeed. But there is no socialist candidate who is running in our election. Maybe there might, someone from the Socialist Party might be running. I don't know if they're going to get on the ballot anywhere. But, I mean, Bernie Sanders, I think for the vast majority of his career, identified as a socialist. But in terms of like what he is running on, and in terms of the way that he's identifying himself today, he is not proposing a socialist country, I think, in the way that Donnie Deutsch wants to make it out to be. Maybe he is, because Donnie Deutsch, I think, has a very sort of wide range of what he considers socialism.
I would say if its economic decisions are made democratically and not by capitalists, Donnie Deutsch would consider that socialism.
Maybe he would. Let's listen.
As a human being, but a socialist candidate is more dangerous to this country as far as the strength and well-being of our country than Donald Trump. I would vote for Donald Trump, a despicable human being.
No, you won't.
Let me tell you something.
Stop yourself.
Let me correct myself. Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
You will never vote for a bigot, a guy that's made bigoted statements for the past 3 years.
Joe, thank you for correcting me. I stand corrected that. I will be so distraught to the point that could even come out of my mouth if we have a socialist, because that will take our country so down. And we are not we are not Denmark. I love Denmark. That's not who we are. And if you love who we are and all the great things that still have to have binders put on the side, please step away from the socialism. And let me correct myself. I will never vote for Donald Trump. Thank you, Joe.
Okay, very good. Fools rush in, Donnie. Videotape us forever.
Here's my chin.
Write that down.
Here's my chin right there.
And by the way,
yeah.
That's Howard Schultz.
That was just so
That's
bizarre.
Howard Schultz.
But I mean, this is. I mean, it does raise this question now. So presumably Donnie Deutsch is talking about Bernie Sanders, right? I mean, who else would he be talking about?
Yeah, and
the idea.
Let
me just finish what I'm saying. And the idea that Donnie Deutsch is threatening to vote for Donald Trump until he's told by his television guy, like, look, we're not going to go there in the context of this. This is, yeah, right. We've got to make a marketing decision here. This is, the argument that needs to happen now. Like, there needs to be, just like there was a requirement for more or less pledges across the board. Now is the time to make these pledges. Will you support the Democratic nominee? Because to the extent that people talk about Bernie Sanders supporters abandoning Clinton in the general election, the numbers are in. Was it Stokes in the Washington Post has shown? We're talking about 12% of Bernie Sanders supporters from the primary voted for Donald Trump. More, almost double, depending on which study you look at, Hillary Clinton's in 2008. Somebody tweeted at me, do you think it's possible that, 9% of Barack Obama supporters in 2008 voted for John McCain? Yes, there was a big push, and maybe this makes up for some of Hillary Clinton's votes as well. There was a big push in 2008 by Rush Limbaugh called Operation Chaos, and it was for Republicans to cross over in these elections, in the primary elections where you did not have to declare your party. And I'm quite convinced that at least half of those, maybe a third of those Obama voters went and voted for John McCain because they were actual Republicans. But also, you got to remember, John McCain was, and this might also contribute to why you had so many Clinton voters who voted for John McCain. John McCain was considered by a lot of Democrats to be much more reasonable, I think, than Donald Trump was. And but nevertheless, the numbers don't lie. But the question is how many of Donnie Deutsch Democrats are going to vote for Donald Trump or are going to basically vote for some third party, their version of a Green Party candidate, to avoid voting for the Democratic nominee if it's Bernie Sanders. And these people need to be held to account in the same way that we would hold any the people who in 2016 would have gone and voted for someone other than Hillary Clinton. And so this is a good a moment to look into how Joe Scarborough wants to brand himself, but also into what could be a significant problem unless it's addressed early.
And also, I would just add to that, Jamal Bowie has a tweet out because there's this new, of course, totally delusional piece in New York Magazine, and the spin from the Howard Schultz team is the backlash must mean we're onto something. And, of course, and all the quotes are obviously either from just enabling friends or the same advisors who want to make a run on this guy. But Jamal Bowie's quote is basically, I forget, I'm paraphrasing, but something effective. I'm increasingly convinced that he just wants to get the president reelected. And I think that I agree.
That Howard Schultz does.
Yes. And because I think there's degrees of it. I think you're right. I think Donnie Deutsch is saying Bernie Sanders, and obviously the piece where the Wall Street guys said, they named it. They said Sanders or Warren.
Right.
But I think in a Schultz case and with some of these other guys, they are such babies that they're living enough that, a Booker or a Harris is even migrating with where the rest of the party is. And they might want to just spoil the whole thing because they're so bratty, entitled, and delusional. I
mean, I find that hard to believe, but I also don't find it hard to believe that they are delusional enough to think that they're going to have they could save the country.
Surely
Schultz. They think they're saving the country if they throw it to Trump.
I don't know about that.
The fact that he said we're not Denmark when he was trying to explain socialism tells you all you need to know about this guy's ideology. I mean, Denmark is not a socialist country. It's not even the most socialist of the Scandinavian countries, by the way. Like, people in Finland think Denmark's like a bunch of free market wage cucks. But this is what
That's what the Prime Minister of Finland said at a recent NATO summit.
Exactly. But this is what I talk about when I talk about fishhook theory. Like, the quote-unquote center will break for the right if forced to choose between the left and the right. And it doesn't take a real socialist. It could be a social democrat who just threatens
Right.
their
That's exactly
financial interests.
That's
And it's not just voting. It's when you talk about people with this much money and power, you know, they make donations, they use their outsized platforms and all of that stuff.
There's no doubt in my mind. I think, you know, to the extent that anything can be done about it now, it is to nip this meme in the bud, as it were, right? Like, because Donnie Deutsch is out there saying this. Part of it is so that it becomes a talking point as to why you got to vote against Bernie Sanders in the primary, because as if like there's an inevitable there's an inevitable chance that people are going to abandon the party because of Bernie Sanders. And it's not inevitable. It's simply the choice that Donnie Deutsch is trying to make. No one's forcing him to do that. So,
well, here's a hot take. Maybe if he's willing to abandon the party over mild social democratic reforms, the party shouldn't have him. Like, if we want to realign the Democratic Party to be more of a labor party, more of a left formation, like the interests of the bosses conflict with the interests of the workers, right? And there's some good faith bosses who are welcome to come along.
Yes, but
there's some bad faith ones.
How does the party say we don't want Donnie Deutsch? Like the party can't kick him out. He's just a guy going on there speaking who would be presumably, so yes, I don't care about Donnie Deutsch being a member of the Democratic Party. He has no influence on the Democratic Party. He does have an influence with a platform every day on the media where he's arguing that there's going to be a backlash if you nominate. And he's basically arguing the same thing that Howard Schultz is arguing. And the reason why they're arguing this now is not because what he's going to do in the voting booth. The reason why he's arguing this right now is to on the ledger of why you would vote for or against a candidate, to put this on the ledger. So that's why at this point, there's nobody in the Democratic Party who comes out and says, Donnie Deutsch is not a member of the Democratic Party. It doesn't matter.
I officially evict you.
Yeah, it's the point is that now is the time, and good for Joe Scarborough. He did exactly what should be done in that instance, and I'm surprised because he's a Republican.